Members of a Minnesota school board make some bold moves as community leaders pledge support to eliminate left-wing priorities in the state's largest school district. Kendall Qualls, the president of TakeCharge Minnesota, is my guest. Kendall, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. Glad to be here.
Let's start with the situation in the Anoka Hennepin School District. A school board member pledged to vote against the district's next budget if it includes programs related to systemic racism, critical race theory, and gender identity. A bold move. You spoke out at the most recent board meeting to support that move. Why did you want to weigh in and to speak out?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, kudos to that board member, Matt Audette, and the two others that are standing up against it. Unfortunately, most Americans, most Minnesotans, and those parents in Anoka Hennepin don't know that those ethnic studies, on the surface, you think, well, it sounds good. It sounds like those are the things we want: inclusivity, dignity to all students. But that's not what this teaching. And unfortunately, it's not. And if it was, I'd be all for it. But here's the scenario we have. First, let's start with the metrics. Nearly 60% of children, Black children, especially Black children in the 10th grade, cannot read at grade level. Nearly 60%. Nearly 70% of them can't function, can't complete, are not competent in math at their grade level. 70% are not competent in math at the grade level. And so the ethnic studies are all about social justice warrior type initiatives. They divide students by race, by gender, and you have to directly form and your identity based on your affinity group. Well, we're much more than that. We're more than just one dimension. And I think it's a very divisive way of moving forward as a nation, as a country, and starting with this generation. It's the wrong direction. We're much more than that in the United States, and these kids are getting a bad stick at this, and including not the basics of a decent education.
What else did you hear that night, Kendall? Do students support these programs, or do you think they're even fully aware of some of the damage being done by some of this messaging?
Well, here's the scenario around this, Liz. Unfortunately, these kids are being used and manipulated. Of course, we want to have an inclusive environment. Of course, we want to have inclusive schools where everyone feels accepted and respected with dignity. We want that. These initiatives do not do that. They make people feel that they need to choose what side they want to be on. It is very divisive. It's not inclusive. And in fact, what they'll try to do is start out by saying, basically, everyone knows that America is a systemically racist country and it's full of white supremacy. Based on that, what are you going to do as a student? Well, if you start with that premise, you're already starting on the wrong foot. You're already calling a country guilty as if it's 1930s or even worse, even 1860 America. We've come so much further along than that. And it excludes a whole half of the population at that time in the 1860s that fought in a civil war to end slavery. It brushes over those sacrifices. It brushes over that history with no notation at all to what sacrifices people made to keep our country together.
You're the president of TakeCharge Minnesota, a nonprofit organization committed to the notion that the promise of America is available to everyone, regardless of race or social station. What do you think of the DEI initiatives found in schools and organizations throughout America? I know you've been vocal after a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling there. Are they helping? Are they hurting the American dream and the future of America?
I've been working to make sure that people understand that the America that my parents grew up in, they grew up in the Jim Crow South, literally where sanctioned segregation existed. It was systemic racism. But this is not the America my parents grew up in. It's not even the America my grandparents grew up in. In fact, I tell people they would have loved to have grown up in the America I grew up in. Now, what DEI initiatives do today is assume that the country has not changed, that it is still Selma, Alabama, 1950, and it's a lie. They want to purport that the reasons why we see so much of these racial disparities in academic performance, financial achievement, corporate boardrooms are all because of systemic racism. And that's an absolute lie. At not one point do they acknowledge the significant fatherless home problem that we have now that we didn't have during the civil rights era. And just to give a point of reference, when I was only 5 years old, 80% of children were born, black children were born in two-parent families. 80%. Today, over 80% of them are born in fatherless homes. That's a stark contrast, and the DEI initiatives, all the people behind it, never acknowledge that issue, or even acknowledge that issue could be a driver in all the things I just mentioned.
And that issue isn't just a Minnesota issue. You guys are now expanding. I understand you have a new office in Tennessee, and some of your work there is focusing on these attacks we see on law enforcement, where it seems they've become a target in all of this.
Yes, we're excited about our expansion. Memphis it's interesting. It's our first expansion site along the Mississippi River. So we share the Mississippi River together. Unfortunately, we share a lot of the same problems. They recently had a police officer that was shot in the line of duty, killed. Another young man prematurely lost his life defending his community from a person that was released on a no bond release on a felony charge. And this young man he just turned 18 years old. Same problems that we're suffering here in Minneapolis with the wrong notion of who our police officers are, the work they do, and the noble efforts that they put forth in our communities. I'm going to tell you, Liz, there's a large percentage of the Black community that has no voice, that has no champion, because they don't agree with a lot of these initiatives that are being pushed in the public arena. They don't agree with the DEI initiatives. They don't agree with the defund the police. They want to restore two-parent families instead of incentivizing single parents. I mean, literally, 52% of Black Americans agreed with the Supreme Court decision to eliminate racial preferences for college and university admissions. Majority of them want federal incentives to be turned away from single parenthood toward two-parent families. Again, these people have no voice, and we feel honored to do that. And we're expanding that beyond the state boundaries. And we're looking forward to doing what we're doing here in Memphis, Tennessee as well.
It seems some are threatened by your perspective and your mission, Kendall. It's been nearly 3 months since an arsonist set fire to your office, along with 2 other conservative organizations, the Center of the American Experiment and the Upper Midwest Law Center. The damage was unbelievable, just to remind those watching this. And federal officials are investigating. There's a $100,000 reward. Do you think they will find who is responsible for what seems to be an act of anti-conservative domestic terrorism right here in Minnesota?
Well, I do believe that they'll eventually find the perpetrators. But here's the disturbing part, Liz. This seems to be the MO for the progressive left. Yeah, they may find the person, but it won't stop them from the behavior. There doesn't seem to be an adult in the room that says, we don't stand for this. This is not who we are as a country. This is not how we convey our oppositions to people that differ from us. We see it right now in our universities that are pushing this anti-Jewish agenda, this anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, and it's nothing but hate. And it's taking away the character of who we are as a country, because this never used to happen. And right now, I'm in this room. You might hear construction noise behind me. We're setting up in our new office facility as a result of that arsonist. So, forgive the background noise if it comes through. But it's not going to deter us at all. We're going to go harder and faster. And we believe that eventually the America that we knew, the respect that we used to have, the dignity that we used to show for each other is going to come back, and we're going to make sure that happens.
Well, we certainly appreciate all your work. You can learn more about Take Charge at TakeChargeUS.com. Again, that's TakeChargeUS.com. Kendall Qualls, again, the president of Take Charge Minnesota. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
That'll do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.